I'm very excited to introduce our keynote speaker, Danielle ONeill, who's been traveling this morning with some friends, and she's from the Wildlife Science Center, and thank you very much for coming.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. My name is Danielle ONeill. I am the Assistant Education Director at a pretty cool place. And I do want to start off giving you a little background about who we are. And I know that I did bring some pamphlets with me today so that you can get a little bit more of an idea of who we are. But I don't want to spend too much time talking about that because I'm here to talk about some raptors. We are, do you mind if you get that on? Just so, sorry, I'll just keep talking. I'm actually not native to Minnesota. I grew up in the state of Maine and moved out here after I got my master's degree. I realized that my true passion, I was a high school teacher, by the way, out in Maine. Science teacher, got my master's degree in ecological teaching, and I heard the word sense of place, and I was so excited because that's actually what my master's work was all about. And so pretty impressed with the whole scope of your initiative, and try to bring some of that to the current position I'm at the Wildlife Science Center. Majority of the animals that we have there are predators on purpose. Predators are some of those animals that have received negative labels in our country in the past. And one of the probably most controversial ones is the top one. And I didn't realize I actually picked the same picture that was on the banner. But the wolves are sort of our signature species at the Wildlife Science Center. We have over 30 wolves there, several subspecies, and we participate in a couple of endangered species programs at the center. Actually, some research being done right now. I had to skip out to come chat with you today, which is cool because I always enjoy meeting new people and sharing our story with those who can be affected by the good work that we do at the center. So we actually have a research team from the St. Louis Zoo. They are part of the species survival program of the Mexican gray wolf, and the Mexican gray wolf is the most critically endangered species of wolf we have in the US. But I diverge. I don't want to spend too much time talking about wolves, but I'll tell you, I can tell you a lot. So if you're really interested in that topic, find me and I'll gladly chat with you. And I do have to say, this is not the venue that I usually chat. I'm usually in a much smaller space, and I tend to ask lots of questions and want responses back, so this is really foreign to me. So if I ask you a question, go for it. Somebody, anybody, please. Otherwise, I'll just talk at you, which I can do, but I'd rather have it be interactive. And I know not everybody's going to be able to come to the smaller sessions that I will be presenting at, but if you are, good, because I do have a couple of raptors with me today. I tried to bring some bigger versions, just because I knew how large this space potentially could be. And I knew that some of them would be a little bit harder to see. One of my favorites, which I usually bring about this big. And I decided, no, I won't go with that one, we'll go larger. But they will be out at the smaller sessions where I'll be at, so you can get a closer look if you're really interested. Excuse me. All the animals in the picture on the first slide are residents at our center. Again, we sort of, oh, did that just skip ahead? Don't go forward. Research projects that go there. We also train wildlife professionals as well. But our main goal at the center is education. And we know, why are you going ahead without me? Don't go ahead without me. There, I'll just pause it. We know what these animals need for survival, basic biology. It's not a hard question to figure out how many whatever could live in Minnesota, space and food resources. But it really comes down to human acceptance. How many wolves can live in Minnesota? How many wolves do people want in Minnesota, right? It's all over the board. It's the same for a lot of animals. So we have, as one of our major goals, like I said, education. We teach preschoolers, we teach adults, everybody in between. And we teach whenever we get a chance. We aren't set up like a zoo where you can come in and just wander around and read a plaque if you want to. And we're going to force you to listen to somebody like myself or a volunteer, and we'll take you on a guided program of the facility, because we want people to leave with a consistent message, not only about the natural history of these animals, but their purpose and why they're important. So we do programs throughout the year. Lots of, even people come out and stay overnight, which is pretty fun. You don't sleep a lot, I'll tell you, because the wolves tend to be a little chatty, but that's okay. It's an experience, I'll tell you. So, let me take my watch off so I don't over-talk. And I have to tell you, majority of I am not a raptor expert by any means. It's a passion. Any animal to me is a passion. They're fascinating. And we can learn so much about them and our environment, especially with these raptors, the health of our environment. So please don't come up to me and ask me a lot of questions. No, I'm just kidding. But again, I'm not an expert. And if there are people out there that are bird experts, amen to you. Because they're fascinating creatures. And if you want an experience above anything else, go to Hawk Ridge up in Duluth during the migratory thing. Those people will blow your mind. They'll look up in the sky, yep, there's a kestrel, yep, wow, that's good. That's amazing that you can identify the birds like that. But we're going to focus more on the structure and the birds that we have here in Minnesota. Now, birds, and I think part of the problem for humans is we're mammals. So we know a lot about mammals because we can associate with them, right? We have a lot of similar traits. Now, when you move into lower order species, sometimes it's hard for us to recognize aspects about them because we can't relate per se, but there are some really cool anatomical similarities that we're going to go through today. And I promise, I only have like 2 slides with words, because I'm not a person that likes to read off a slide or have people read off the slide. But birds are incredibly diverse, right? Birds, not all of them fly, so they have, some of those characteristics are shared throughout. Some of them don't. It's like they don't always follow all the same rules, right? But there's one thing that really ties all birds together, which is feathers. Right, good. Diversity. Small birds, 0.06 ounces. Anybody know what bird that is? Yes, good job. Do you know what kind of hummingbird? Oh, gold star. Awesome. Bumblebee hummingbird. By the way, I can't visualize what 0.06 grams is, other than recognizing the little things you put on the scale when you're in school. So here's an association. It's about the same as 2 nickels. So the next time you hold 2 nickels in your hands, that's the weight of that bird. That flying bird that lays eggs that, oh my God, how amazing is that? Something as well designed as it is only weighs the same as 2 nickels. That blows my mind. That's right, it's a hummingbird. Who's at the other end? Who's the ginormous one? Yes, good job. Why don't you guys come up here and teach? I'll go sit down there. Yeah, it is. It's an ostrich. So again, flighted, flightless. Not all of their bones are the same. There's a lot of diversity across this group of animals. But I want to talk about a very specialized group of birds. Predatory birds. Is a robin a predator? Ha ha ha, yes. So I love that question because everyone's like, no. Oh, wait a minute. Yep. Worms, bugs, those are animals. That means they're a predator. It may not mean, we can understand, well, maybe some of us, some of you might eat bugs, I don't know. But we don't tend to eat a lot of bugs and worms, but they are animals, so that means they are a predator. One of my favorite things that I witness at the center almost on a daily basis is this. Just so you know, most of our mammalian critters there are, I told you, are predators, they're carnivores. What do we feed them? Good job. Yeah, meat. So I go to Cub Food and buy chicken and steak and... Deer. Oh yeah, baby, deer. Is there a deer population problem in Minnesota? Too high? Oh, too low? Too low. That's a deer lover in the group. It's very high. About 1.4 million deer in the state. We have lots of deer here. And therefore, we have lots of roadkill deer. And that's actually what we feed our mammals. The county that we're in, near Forest Lake, by the way, is where the Wildlife Science Center is. They pick up roadkill deer and they bring it to our center, and then we feed it to our animals. Which bird do you think do I see most often eating roadkill deer in the wolf pen? Crows, vulture, chickadees. Those big, vicious, predatory chickadees, which I love, because again, nobody thinks of a chickadee being predatory. It's predatory, quote unquote, right? They aren't set up like the real predatory birds, like the raptors, and that's what really separates these birds from the rest. Now, fascinating thing to me is, of all the raptors that are out there, the majority are out during the day. So you should know a lot of raptors. That's why I'm really fascinated by them, because the majority are out there as long as you're paying attention. And then the nighttime ones, you might catch a few of them, but you probably will have another way to discover their appearance, and we'll talk about that, or their, not their appearance, but them being in your environment. We'll talk about that as we go. So it was written up there that there were 6. What are they? General categories of raptors. Hawks, owls, eagles, falcons. That's the big question mark. There's this big question mark whether or not the vultures actually fit. Not long ago, they were kind of pulled aside, say maybe we should put them with the storks, because vultures don't follow all the anatomical rules of being a raptor. And I do have a vulture's foot up here, which is really cool. That's one of the things that really pulls them aside. Vultures also have something that a lot of birds don't. Really well-developed sense of smell. But I diverge yet again. Okay, so we did hawk, falcon, eagle, owl, osprey. Amen to you. Awesome raptor. We'll talk about them. And then there's another one. Kite. Wow. Hello. Look, you got all kinds of raptor experts in the group. That's awesome. Kites are amazing flyers, quite acrobatic flyers. So let's take a minute to talk about bones. And again, this would be different for those non-flying birds. They have much denser bones, but on the whole, we're talking about a bone structure that's designed for one of the coolest things that a lot of birds do, and again, that's flight. Right? If you're super heavy, it's not a quick get out of there kind of situation when it comes to flying. Although we do have a very common bird here that's not quite as light, very awkward when it takes off. Yes, the loon. The loon, if you've ever seen a loon, they need like a runway of water before they can get up enough speed to take off, and it's because they are heavier. But they need that heaviness because they're divers. So, right, think of like a bobber, right? They float really well if you have lightweight bones, but if you've got to dive really deep, that's a lot of energy you have to expend to actually get to that depth if you're not heavy already. So I can't obviously pass this around, and I know it's not going to be visible to everybody, but their bones are pretty lightweight, but strong, right? Then that structure right there of those kind of like struts, it's just like a bridge, right? You can get strength in this design without a whole lot of weight to the actual thing. You know, a different style of bridge versus just stacking things on. Same thing with these bones. Air sacs to lighten them up, but the downside is you're fragile, right? If a bird flies into something, their bones shatter, and they're really hard to repair. Actually, the majority of the raptors that are at our center are there because of injuries they sustained in the wild, and they couldn't live successfully on their own. I'll come back to this one right here in just a minute, because this amazing, those adaptations again. Speaking of the head. And unfortunately, the owl that we used to have at the center that would do the head rotation, I could stand up here with it on my fist, and somebody could walk around me and the owl would do it. Unfortunately, she passed away of old age. But head rotation, necessary. Is it just the owls that do it? No, I think it's just the ones that have been cartoonized the most about it, or you know, the whole Halloween thing with heads twisting around. But it's most birds that have to do that hyper rotation. Why? There's an advantage to having eyes in the front of your face. What is that? Depth perception. That binocular vision. Eyes out here are good for something else. Yeah, peripheral vision, right? Eyes in the front means you hunt. Eyes on the side, run and hide. Right? You're worried about what's coming from every direction. These guys, their eyes are so big and unusually shaped that they're fixed in one position. There's actually a ring of bones that you can't see here because it doesn't preserve well. It's really fragile, that kind of lock those eyes in one position, facing forward. So right now you can look up to the sky without moving your head, right? You can roll your eyes up, down, all around. This thing can't. So if it needs to look up, it has to turn, or most birds, have to lift its entire head up to do that. So all the way around, 360? That would hurt. How far can you go? 85. Yeah, 90 each way, hopefully. So about 180, right? So over 270. So if you could turn your head down the back of your, right, straight down your back, you could be a bird too. So their eyes are more elongated in shape. And you'll see a thing about that in just a second too. This was a great picture I found when I was setting up this slideshow, because again, remember, there's a lot of similarities. Birds, it's very obvious where the bird's legs and feet are. Where are its hands, arms, all that? Do they have them? Yeah, it's just a little different. But that's one of the really cool things. There are a lot of similarities, even in the design of that wing. This is just to give you an idea of how we would stand if we were a bird. And again, that's because of our center of gravity is a little different. But again, majority of those bone structure, those bones are still there. Not as much speciality when you get to the actual hands and feet, but they don't need to do as much as we ape-like things do. But you want to talk about a good foot. That's a raptor foot. And again, if you come see me later, you can take a closer look. And even when we stop to break, if you want to come up and see the stuff on the table, you can do that. Talons, that's one of those things that really separates the raptors from those other predatory birds. So If you see this foot, oh, and that's not up. I didn't take a picture of it that way up here. But this foot, we have feathers down here, and now we're naked. This one, feathers all the way down. Who's still here in Minnesota? Which of these two? Long johns, shorts, right? These poor things are here suffering with the rest of us this winter. So which one of those we talked about earlier does this foot belong to? Owls. Owls are here. Owls are well insulated to be here. The majority of the other raptors will leave. They're like, oh, forget it. You know, fall's coming. We see the seasonal changes, the daylight changes. Let's all fly south. Like one of the most popular birds we have here in Minnesota, the red-tailed hawk. If you look up their scientific name, it's Buteo jamensensis. And so when I first started having to learn all this stuff, I went, jamensensis? What does that mean? Why is it named that? And it's because when they were first classified by that traditional method, they were down in Jamaica hanging out and like, yeah, forget Minnesota, let's go down and stay warm. Smart birds, right? But hard way to live. The fact that you have to fly that far south and then turn around a few months later and come all the way back takes a big toll on your body. Whereas these guys, you know, suffer in silence, I guess, hang out here, but nutritionally harder, right? That's why we're seeing things like snowy owls coming down because the lack of food up in Canada. So like, oh, let's go winter in Minnesota. Like, same thing with the great grays. Like, wow, I mean, those are birds, good adaptations. On the most part, and again, not everybody follows the rules, but on the most part, those daytime raptors tend to have 3 talons forward, 1 back. Again, there's an exception, and we'll talk about that. And this was, the way this was dried, it was dried with the 3 toes forward, but a lot of times owls will have this talon back, so it's 2 and 2. So they can actually articulate it or rotate it a little bit. But the one with the best reticulation, I think, is the osprey. Ospreys are fish hunters. And if you've ever touched a fish, you know they're not easy to hang on to. So they have a really deep sickle shape to their talons. And actually the pads of their feet are really, really rough, like sandpaper. And they do rotate this toe backwards so they have maximum grasp on that fish. And I have a really cool picture of an osprey with prey in its talons. I'll show you just a minute. And just for those of you who are curious, here's the gorgeous foot of the vulture. But you can see they're flat-footed, and it's not about using these to catch food. That's why there's that trickiness of being a raptor or not. But you go to any raptor book, right, and the vultures are still in there. Take a look at a couple of pictures. There's that picture of that bottom right. That's the osprey hanging on. And obviously those raptors are important not only for catching, but you know, there's that perching piece. And you know, up in the sky soaring, some of them way up high, some of them hovering above the earth, some of them perched above the earth, flying down and then having to change the whole orientation of their bodies so that their feet go first. Incredible, incredible hunters. Here's that osprey again on your left. You can see that orientation, they had to just tuck their body, pull those wings back in for a grasp. And obviously, you know, for most birds, that nest building piece too, that's why feet are important. Feet are cool, whether it's a mammal foot or a bird foot, they're fascinating. So feathers, again, the one thing that they share, but structurally different. And I have some different feathers up here, real quick. Oh, good. Okay. I gotta fast forward. I have so many cool things to show you, and I want to make sure you see what's in the box because that's all you really care about. I know. So, these feathers from Red-tailed hawk, that's right. Again, that really common one you see perched on light posts and telephone poles. If you think about it, we've set up perfect hunting places for red-tails and other raptors. It's high, also good nesting places for things like ospreys. And these nice little pathways that we mow right along the interstate too, and it's perfect little runway for rodents. And so the red-tails are like, sweet, I'm just gonna sit up here and wait for something to run by, or I'm gonna be way up in the sky. So way up, catch those thermals, those warm air currents coming off the surface of the earth, get up there, stick out my wings, and just soar, right? That little tiny hummingbird, you know, has to eat almost all the time to get enough energy for all the flapping that little thing has to do. Whereas this thing doesn't have to eat quite as often because it's smart about conserving energy. So it goes way up in the sky, puts out its wings, and then it uses this for steering, right? It's like a rudder on a boat. Also for balance as well, and especially when it's perching. So that's what those beautiful rusty colored feathers are here at the bottom. Are they always rusty? When aren't they rusty? When they're young. When they're young. They're dark brown when they're young. These feathers up here we're probably most familiar with, personally, not from a red-tailed hawk, probably from a goose or something along that lines, right? What are these? Down feathers, right? This is for warmth. No man-made product at this point that they've found that retains heat as well as a downy feather. So this is insulation. So this is what the owls have lots of. And if you look on your left is an example of a one of those daytime feathers. On the right is the owl feather. Owl feathers are very different. Those daytime hunters are more about speed flying. The nocturnal hunters are well, not all are true nocturnal either, but for those owls, it's about stealth, that's right. You want to sneak up on your food. So the structure of their feather is very different. They have that nice combed edge, as you can see. Even the texture of the feather is very different. And again, you're welcome to come up and touch any of this stuff when we're done. But it's designed to help them pass through the air silently. And I'm not going to go through, excuse me, all these different types of feathers. But just to give you an idea, it's not just about flight. And that's what you have to remember. Everything that you'll see on these birds is a feather. Even these really cool things, which I'll show you a picture of in just a second, right here. Bristles. It looks like whiskers around the nostrils. And it functions very similarly to nose hairs. Right, filter things out. They have what look like eyelashes, right? But it's no hair. It's just a modified feather. One of my favorite things about the birds, not so much the daytime birds, but especially for the nocturnal birds, is camouflage. For those ones that are hunting during the day, they sort of have reversed coloration. And I'll point that out when I take out that daytime bird that I brought with me. Tend to be lighter on the belly and under wing, and darker on the back. So if you're down on the ground and you're a mouse, you look up, the lighter underside of that bird is more likely to blend in with a brighter sky. And then if you're somebody above, obviously not mammalian. Well, it could be a bat, I suppose. Yeah, see? Everybody breaks the rules. The masters of camouflage, though, are the owls. When you think about it, they have to be. They are trying to blend in the hardest time. They're trying to blend in when it's full sunlight. And as long as they keep those gorgeous eyes shut, most of the time you walk right past them, never knowing that they're there. The next picture will give you an example. I mean, the only reason why that great horned owl is sticking out a little bit more is because that beautiful eye is open, and that striking bright sort of yellow color makes it pop. But they are colored very similarly all around, most of them. How do you tell a female cardinal from a male cardinal? Color, yeah, for a lot of songbirds. There's not a lot of color variance with raptors. There are a couple, the ones pictured up here, that do have some color differences, male versus female. But on the whole, it's not about color But why are they so brightly colored, by the way, all those boy songbirds? Hey, ladies, right? They're very flashy, right? And the girls tend to be shades of brown for better camouflage on those nests. These guys, it's about size. Who's bigger in the raptor world? Girls rule in the raptor world. They're much larger. And there's an advantage to having parents that are different sizes. It gives you more variety of hunting. So dad can go out and hunt smaller things. Mom can then go out and look for small things and big things. I'm, again, just going to flip through this really quickly because, oh my goodness, I'm talking too much. Eagles, great success story here in the United States with their comeback. It wasn't only eagles that were affected by the whole DDT pesticide thing. These guys got all the press. But again, a good indicator of the health of your ecosystem to see the number of raptors. And I have to tell you, I'm really impressed. One of the coolest things I think about this state is your three distinct ecosystems. And so therefore you have this huge variety of critters here, which is fascinating. Hard for people that are trying to learn everything about the animals and things in this state because it's so diverse, but fascinating. And within a day you could go through all these different ecosystems and see totally different plants and animals, and cool. Wings. What I love about studying animals, and especially birds, is it's not just about biology. Here's physics. Physics in work right here, right? We stole this design for our own uses for flight, right? So air comes over the top fast, slower on the bottom, and it creates lift, right? All in that design. And if you actually dissect a bird's wing, again, very similar in structure, those bones. At the finger level, again, they don't need as much because that dexterity isn't necessary. Different shapes to wings. Some raptors have very broad wings. Some have sickle-shaped wings for a different style of flight. The owls tend to have very broad wings because, again, not speed. It's more of a swooping action. I know it's so hard to... one of my favorite... Oh, actually, it's the next slide. I love to go out tracking. And that's one of the only reasons I like winter. Because you have the great opportunity to see tracks. And one of my favorite tracks to find is the one that have been left from this. When you see an owl who's come down to grab food and they leave that gorgeous winged print as they come down. All right, here's an intense slide for you. Stare at you. Kind of talked about this already. You can see the, by the way, eyes take up more room in that skull than the brain. That's how important those eyes are for these birds. And you can see there we have another eyelid in there, the nictitating membrane, translucent, so they can keep their eyes moist, but they can still see through them. Important, especially when you're hunting. This is super cool. Kestrels. What group do kestrels belong to? Hawk, falcon, eagle. Kestrels are this gorgeous little falcon. Did you all hear that it was big news when the Target Stadium was built and there was this falcon that was hanging out in the lights because the lights were attracting moths, and the falcon was like, sweet, I don't even have to hunt, I'm just going to perch up here on the lights and get lots of moths to eat. It was a little kestrel. They're about this, I see them a lot, or I'm from Rush City, so east of here, and I see them a lot perched, and they similar in size to like a mourning dove, but without that beautiful sort of bowling ball pin shape of the mourning dove. They aren't as long-necked, I guess is the way I describe them. But one of the coolest things I think about kestrels is they're one of the raptors that hovers. So you'll see them sometimes hunting by flapping their wings really, really fast and hovering above the surface of the earth. They actually attest that these guys can see in the ultraviolet range, picking up on mouse or rodent urine tracks or trails. That's, by the way, was in somebody's house. I was like, oh, I don't want to ever do that where I live. Ears. They do have ears, and they are very similarly located behind the eyes like ours, but not symmetrical, right? Even those eared owls are, those aren't ears, those are, intimidating feathers up here. So if you go back from their eyes, one's higher, one's lower, one's further forward, one's further back. So they have an excellent range of hearing all the way around. And so you won't see the ear because they don't have these weird cartilaginous flaps that stick out the side. But because of the structure of their face and their beak, it pushes that sound back, funneling it in. A lot of vet care on raptors to see their eyes actually, to look at the back of their eyes for the eye health. They actually look through the ear canal and to test to look at those eyes. Gorgeous, beautiful. Beaks. Beaks are important. Beaks are very specialized depending upon the bird, right? Depending upon what they're eating, you have those long, narrow beaks, you have nut-cracking beaks. But for the raptors, there's a little bit of difference with the beaks. A lot of those daytime hunters tend to have really elongated, hooked beaks. Owl beaks are pretty small. They do have a cutting edge along that beak that they do have to keep sharp. And some of that's done just by the food they eat, but they also will, I've seen raptors up on telephone poles sharpening their beaks on like transformers. Not so safe, but it happens. Preening, right? You got to keep yourself looking good. No, it's about keeping those feathers in line. Right? They zip and unzip those feathers to make sure they're smooth. And they also keep them oiled. And that's what the preening thing is all about. Right? You have to have some amount of water protection. Not as much as some of the other, especially those water birds. But you don't want to get weighed down by water. And too much oil is just as bad as not enough. Right? If you think of like those poor birds that have ever been caught up in an oil spill. So it's a very finite balance. So digestion, what's that gorgeous picture on the right? Not poop, because it looks just like every other bird poop. You might witness it this morning. They tend to poop once I take them out of the box. Yes, it's their undigested food, and I did hear somebody say a pellet. Again, something a lot of people associate with owls, but it's not just the owls that cough up pellets. But that's one of the best pieces of evidence you can find in your woodlot about the presence of owls. If you find a tree and the base of it has pellets in it, you probably have a good roosting spot for an owl. And the reason why the digestive process for the hawks and the falcons, they have a higher pH, which actually means a lower number, right? And so that digests more of the hair or feathers and bones. Plus they rip and tear and crack the bones more than the owls do. They don't have a very good sense of taste, which is probably good for carrion eaters, although these guys aren't very keen on eating things that are dead. They actually have a bone in their tongue, and you can see in that picture where that tongue stops. It doesn't go as far down in their throat as ours do, but the bone actually helps push the food back. Owls, again, tend to swallow that food whole or bigger chunks, and you can see that pH number is higher. So owl pellets are the classic things you do in school, right? You dissect a pellet to see what they've been eating. My favorite one ever, I had a student dissect one. We found an entire bat skeleton inside this pellet, and we're able to put it back together. So fluttering is just a way for them to regulate heat, kind of panting like a dog. And for us, in captivity, sometimes it's a sign of stress. So it is something important for us to take a look at. All right. Oh my gosh. Okay, let me go through these quickly. So, hawks. Again, most common raptor you're going to see here, and as long as you're paying attention, you should see them. Biggest, the ferruginous, smallest, the sharp chin. And this is one of my favorite ones, because we always get, we take our birds everywhere. We go to the state fair every year and set up a booth, and we always get people coming up and saying, oh, I have this raptor in my, in my backyard, and it's eating my songbirds. Okay, because it's usually not in the winter time, right? Because these birds are all smart, they leave. So feed the birds in the winter, because the ones that do hang out here need your help. You are setting yourself up if you're feeding the birds in the spring and the summer and even the fall. And so the sharp chins and the Cooper's hawks are up in the trees just waiting. And you set up a buffet for them. The little songbirds come into the feeder and they're, oh, time to eat, and they come down. Smart birds. Most animals are like that. Most animals are going to be opportunistic. They're going to go for what's easy. And if you put food out there, you're going to help somebody, and you might be helping somebody else and not know it. Real quickly, we'll go through the hawks, because I didn't bring the hawk today, because again, ones you should see quite often. So broadwing on the left, that awesome death stare from the ferruginous hawk on the right. The Coopers and the sharp chin. Gorgeous red tail, which again is the most common one you're going to see. Red shouldered on the right. Let's see if I can play this, if it works. Hello? Oh no, I didn't check the sound before we started, but red-tailed hawks, that's kind of a funny joke in the raptor world. They're the ones that have that really high-pitched scream, and it's the one in the movie world that they tend to dub in for eagles, because the eagle's call really isn't that ferocious. It's kind of like a cackling sound, and so they give it, the more aggressive sound of the red-tailed hawk very, very commonly. And you can look at that range map right there, the red tail. It's everywhere in the state, right? One of the easier ones to pick out, because when it's up in the sky soaring, you can see that nice, beautiful red tail, right? That's the nice thing about identifying the red tail. Some of these other ones, they all look the same, with a few distinguishing characteristics. And that's the piece you have to learn if you're going to be out in the field trying to identify these things. Rough-legged hawks are a tundra species. That's the one on the left. And that's the one we see down here, again, wintering in Minnesota. And they actually have feathers that go way, way down on their legs for that extra insulation. Harriers and goshawks. All right. Oh my gosh. Oh, I hear you in there. So, there are several falcons in Minnesota. But again, I told you I wanted to bring something big. So what did I bring? Ding, ding, ding. Peregrine falcon, boy or girl? Oh, who said boy? Girl, of course. Remember, I told you they're bigger. Hi, gorgeous. You want to step up? Good girl. So, the peregrine falcon. This is the ultimate hunter. These guys are amazing, right? Clocked at over 200 miles per hour in that dive. Look at those long sickle-shaped wings to cut through the air really fast, extra long tail feathers. When they're in a dive, they tuck that all and they just dive bomb straight down. And then again, last minute, complete change in, sorry, I know I'm supposed to be a tree right now. It's hard for me not to talk with my hands. So that their feet are the ones that get to that bird first. Falcons are notorious bird eaters. And they have extra long toes and talons to hang on to those birds. This bird has another really cool adaptation. And okay, are you going to go to the bathroom? And if it poops on the stage, I'm sorry, I'll clean it up, but I have to come back to change the slide. Biggest, smallest, which is one of my favorites. I just love the kestrels. They're just beautiful birds. Here's that peregrine again, pretty diverse in its range, but they, I thought I had a picture of it. Let me double check. Oh, I didn't put it on there. They have on their beak, it's called a tomial tooth, a little V-shaped thing that comes down, and it's actually designed to help instantly stop their prey from moving. It actually fits right in between the vertebra and goes snap, and the animal is incapacitated. Incredible hunter right here. This was another bird that was hard hit by the DDT situation, but great reintroduction story too. Especially here in of all places, right in the heart of major metropolises like the Twin Cities. They like to nest on cliff sides, and what's a high-rise building or a smokestack other than a big cliff, right? An artificial cliff, but they're nesting in Rochester, they're right in the Twin Cities, and they're like, oh, yes, and then there's chickens to catch right in the city, right? AKA pigeons. And most people in the cities really don't care if the pigeon population declines. And so they have this perfect situation. We get lots of people that say, oh, I'm in this office building on like the 25th floor, and we just love the fact that every once in a while we'll just look up and there's this bird dive bombing out of the sky, and you see a puff of feathers when this thing grabs that pigeon. It's just an amazing thing. And again, you can see on her the lighter belly and that beautiful slate-colored back. They are born with dark chocolatey feathers on the back. This is another one that changes, like the red tail feathers, like the bald eagles. But it's only within about a year that these guys go from the chocolate to the slate. Amazing eyesight, right? It's all about focusing that vision. They have this nice little bony ridge over each eye that acts like a baseball cap to shade the sun from above. Nice dark cheek feathers like baseball and softball players to keep the glare from below. So all about focusing that sight. Nice dark colored eyes because, again, daytime hunting. Just an amazing thing. This bird, boy, I think she weighs about 2.5 pounds. That's it. Male's half the size of her. She was a falconer's falcon. Falconry's been around for a long time, more so in other parts of the world than here in the United States. And it's something that's still practiced, and I think it's fascinating. They tend to flush with a dog, and then the falcon goes out and does all the hard work, and then brings it back. They're usually hunting birds. But this was the most common one here, but more and more people nowadays are using red-tailed hawks, actually, in falconry, which is pretty cool. She is now retired, right? She was hatched from an egg. She was this gentleman's hunting partner for many years. Then she became a breeder for him, and she's now at retirement age, and so that's why we have her. The one pictured over here is the male. He's the one that we failed falconry. It doesn't always work out. Again, a lot of falconers will use females, not only because of their size difference. How do you say this nicely? They're a little easier to train than the boys. And he's a great example. We had him when he was very little, and we've been trying to train him to come to a whistle, a little Pavlovian thing. Whistle, fly to my hand, you get a piece of chicken. Boy, it's just not working, unfortunately, but just a cool little bird. How old is she? She is 10 years old. On the whole, most raptors, in terms of their life expectancy, more due to, or associated with, I guess you should say, size. Bigger is better, right? I don't have a picture of her, but that little owl that I wanted to bring, but I wanted you to be able to see at the same time, has to worry about being hunted by other things, and including other raptors. So it's a harder life. What's that? No, not a saw-whet. I wish, though. Oh my God, talk about a beautiful bird. I do not have an eagle, an osprey, or a kite. It's actually very much harsher, or harder, I guess you should say, permitting process to get an eagle than it is for any of these other ones. We are licensed by the USDA to have all these animals, and we are inspected every year. You know, there's our symbol there on the left. Very recognizable. Again, once they get that white head, it's not hard to pick out a bald eagle. And bald eagles in some areas in the state will hang out if there's open water, right? Same thing with red-tailed hawks. Sometimes red-tailed hawks won't go to Jamaica, although I don't know why they don't. If there's a food source that they have access to. Osprey on the left, gorgeous bird. Again, I see them quite often, but again, you got to be near water, and they're the ones that also really like to build on those platforms on top of telephone poles. And a lot of places will actually put up separate platforms to encourage them to get away from the power lines. The kites, again, are more prairie-ish in their range, and just beautiful birds. But my favorite, because these are the ones you don't see very often, right? Great horned owl, sure. Reason why, one, size, and they don't mind being close proximity to humans in backyards if you have the right kind of trees. But that camouflage piece is just so cool. Oh, hi, gorgeous. Usually, yeah, there's usually, how did they call that? Site monogamy. It's usually site monogamy, not mate monogamy. Why? You might lose your mate in the migration piece. If you're talking about those migrators, or even you might lose that mate to the mate got hit by a car, and your species has to move on, but they're very good about coming back to the same site. That's why if you're lucky enough to find those trees with those evidence of owls around, you'll see them over and over again. Biggest great gray, not necessarily by weight, but by height. There's that gorgeous little guy. They're so cute. You talk about an animal that had a bad reputation, right? These animals that come out at night, scary at night. They scream, they make these weird sounds, but once you get to know them, they're pretty cool. So left, there's your great horned owl. We have two great horned owls at the Wildlife Science Center, a male and a female, both of whom were injured. The male has a broken wing. Flew into something. We're not 100% sure what it flew into. And the female actually flew in and she has a head injury and a pupil that's constantly dilated. She's lucky she survived crashing headfirst into something. Well, hello, gorgeous. I know. Clack, clack, clack. That's a little warning to me that I'm way too close. But you have to come out, beautiful. You have to come out. Turn your head the other way. Good girl. So the bird I usually bring, the little owl I usually bring is the screech, the one that's pictured on the right up there. There are two color phases to the screech. You have a rufous, which is the more brownish red colored. You're supposed to look at the crowd. There's a good example of head rotation. That's what we're displaying right now. Maybe she's just shy. And they also have a gray face, and we have a little gray face screech, which is just an amazing bird. Weighs about the same as a stick of butter. It just blows my mind. Again, this bird looks huge, but lots of lightweight feathers and lots of downy feathers. And which bird is this? Say it again. Barred, yes. Why? Yeah, it looks like it has bars or stripes, right? This is my favorite owl to call in. It's one of the easiest sounds to replicate. I will not do it. It's embarrassing, but it's effective once you learn it. But this is that who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? And one of the best ways to, again, if you don't see pellets, of knowing there are owls in your neighborhood is by listening for them. And they're very distinctive calls. And this is the time of the year when they're really going to start chatting it up. Why? Yes, we're sorry. You're one of those animals that mates in the wintertime. But it's a smart thing to do. The owls mate this is height of mating season coming up here in February, and that means they have their babies really, really early in the spring, and the babies get a little chance to grow up before all those migrators come back. And all those migrators come back and they nest, and then the owls have more food to pick from with those little birds. So it's a great strategy. And plus, you can do your nesting, start raising your young, and you can steal nest sites from other things because they're not here to defend them. Are you ready? I'm going to move back. You can stay out for a few minutes. Did it really? Oh, she turned. Now, okay, maybe I should stand back too. That way you can actually see her, huh? Does that work? Yeah, it does. Awesome. All right. That's not awkward or anything. This is actually the biggest stage this girl has ever been on. She's our newest bird at the center, so I'm pretty impressed with how well she's doing, actually. So there's the barn owl on the left, and this gorgeous moon face. These guys are the screamers. They, more so than the screech owls, right? The screech owls get the bad name. Screech owls do screech, but they also have a beautiful trilling call that they'll make. But the barn owls are those screamers. There's a close-up picture of that beautiful. I told, just like other bird poop, right? I'll clean it up, I promise. Look at that. I just love these two. the saw-whet and the little burrowing owls. Those cool little long legs. Long-eared, short-eared. The ones that we're seeing evidence of this year especially. I think it was down in Ramsey just the other day. Somebody caught one of these, not caught it, but took a picture of one of them up in the top of a big conifer. Gorgeous. Hawk owls, boreal owls. They're going to be coniferous, so you got to go further northeast to catch them. And again, the great grays tend to be more Canadian, but some of them will be in that northeastern section of the state. And this is one of my favorite baby names. Right? The kits for foxes, porcupets for porcupines. And what are baby owls? Owlets, yeah. So cute. Actually, they're pretty homely, but they're still cute. Right. Good girl. Good girl. So, the nice thing about being in this state, I actually did well. I fast-forwarded enough so I stopped close to being on time. Again, is that these animals, they're here. So go out and experience it while you can. And even though it's been a brutal winter, there are some animals that are still out there, very active. Depending upon where you are in the state, obviously, wolves and lynx. And not everybody's lucky like, oh, it's not on here, the bears. I wish I could be a bear and just sleep away the wintertime, but that just doesn't happen. So we're not lucky enough. So take the opportunity to be out and experience these critters and get to know them better. I again offer you to come up and take a closer look at any of the artifacts up front. And if you come see me in those breakout sessions, I'll have at least one of the birds out so you can get a closer look. The Wildlife Science Center is open for public tours every Saturday at 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock, and we do private programs throughout the year, so hopefully I might see some of you again. Thank you very much. Good.